Welcome everyone to Discourse. This is Abel.
This is Tony.
And today we're talking about Halo, The Fall of Reach.
All the tank stations are ready.
All right, Tony, so tell us about the book.
The book opens with a Covenant attack on a planet, and the Spartans are called in to fight them off. And in this very first chapter, we get a good understanding of who the Spartans are, who the humans are, and who the bad guys are. So this book comes out right when Halo Combat Evolved came out back in, what was it?
2001.
2001, 19 years ago. This book came out in conjunction with that video game because Microsoft knew that this was going to be a huge game, and they wanted to hire Eric Nyland, the writer, to expand the Halo universe along with this video game. So this book talks about how the Spartan program was started by Dr. Halsey, and how she recruited the soldiers to be in the Spartan program, how they got the armor, what they were first used for, and then what they eventually were used for to fight off the Covenant attacks.
Yep, their original purpose, right? It wasn't always to fight the aliens.
Yeah, so originally they were...
Oh my God.
You get to see why the Spartans were created in here. And that's, I think, why I really like this book, because I played the Halo video game. I enjoyed the story. And then I came across this book several years afterward. I read it. And this book talks about, again, how the Spartans were created, but it also talks about how the planet Reach fell, which planet Reach holds the military complex that trains the Spartans. And then right at the end of this book is where Halo Combat Evolved, the very first video game, starts. So that game starts right when this book ends. Even without the video game, this is a very solid science fiction book. Like action, military, space opera type science fiction book. But just the world in general that they're building in here is really like huge and amazing. Probably more complex and bigger than Star Wars. It's more complex and bigger than, what's that show on Amazon?
The Expanse.
The Expanse. The Expanse is amazing. Yeah, the overall story of Halo that Microsoft and Bungie has created is enormous and enormously complex as well.
Yeah, and it all started with just this one book because they wanted to put a storyline right behind the game that they wanted people to buy. And this was when Xbox first came out with a huge controller. Remember that thing? It was a beast.
Where you're holding onto, you're like, I could play this game, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It was like holding onto a giant potato. You know what I mean? And then the joysticks were off center too.
Yeah,
so you're playing a potato with joysticks that are off center.
Yeah, it was rough. And Halo really did get that system kick-started in.
What I like about this book is the creation of the Spartan program in general, right? So we get to understand who Dr. Halsey is, and we find out how she created these super soldiers. She basically abducted small children.
Yeah, and that didn't come up until like the middle of the book.
Yeah,
where
did it? No, it came out like in the beginning, right? It's like chapter 2 or 3.
Yeah.
She's on a mission with a lieutenant.
At the time, it was Lieutenant Keyes.
Yeah, Lieutenant Keyes at the time. Which we find out throughout the entire Halo series beyond this book, the Keyes family in general becomes very important. He becomes Captain Keyes, and then he has a daughter, and they become very integral to the overall story.
Do you remember why Dr. Halsey chose him to join her in this endeavor?
I do remember. It's because he tried to... It was he was in training, and something had happened. I think somebody got injured or died, and... He was supposed
someone was at fault.
And someone was at fault, and he was supposed to testify against them, but he didn't, right? So he knows how to keep a secret, and that's why Dr. Halsey likes him.
Yep, he kept his mouth shut. So he was recruited to the special secret program, and he kept his mouth shut for the whole program until the whole book. So he really plays a big part in this series, or the book.
Yeah, so that's another impressive thing about this book is he was able to weave in all of these characters that are going to be huge later on. You get to see the genesis of all of these really amazing characters. But let's focus a little bit more about the crime against humanity that Dr. Halsey committed with all of these small children.
Yeah, so talking about the children, Tony, the book opens up, after that first battle that gives you the background of the Halo at first when you're reading it, you get the feel that these are just special children and maybe they have like a high IQ, they're stronger than the other kids, they're just more advanced. But, you know, as you keep reading the book, you find out they're clones.
So they're not clones initially, right? I think what happens is she recruits these kids and then they're cloned. And then she trains the clones to be super soldiers.
And they inject them with stuff, right? And like enhance their like
Exactly.
immune system,
Yeah,
growth hormones. And...
But not right away though. So so the Spartan program takes these human children and
starting at age 6.
And really sends them through a training program that's really an evolution of their body to become weapons, right?
Yep.
It's not just the recruitment. It's not just injecting them with some kind of chemicals to make them better. It's not just the armor that she then places on them. It's a culmination of all of these things all put together that make the Spartans who they actually are, right?
So there's what is it like? Out of all the kids chosen, only a certain percentage make it to the Spartan program, right?
Yeah, it seems like every step of the way they're weeding out some of the clones that were picked. I think once they become like 12 or 13 or 14, that's when they inject them with some kind of chemicals and graft something onto their body. Because she had mentioned that if they do that when they're younger, before puberty, bad things will happen.
Oh, yeah, I think it happens during puberty as their body is, you know, morphing and everything, and they do those drugs.
Their bodies are morphing?
You know what I mean?
Yeah, my body morphed during puberty too. They go through more training trying to figure out how to use their new body that's like augmented with these grafts and chemicals, right?
Yeah, because they're super quick. When they try to reach for something, they're too fast and they end up falling or breaking something.
It's like reaching for something and then knocking it like off the table because you were just trying to grab it.
They get recruited at age 6. They get welcomed into the program at the Reach facility. The next day, like they get woken up at 05:30. Like, get your asses up. We're starting training today.
Basic training. So you can imagine like 6-year-old children in basic training.
Yeah, and they're doing sit-ups, push-ups, pull-ups, all this stuff. And if they don't do it, they got whacked or shocked, right?
Yeah, they get shocked. They get beaten. These children have no choice. But through, John 117, the main Master Chief, the main Spartan. Through him, we get to really understand who these children are, right? And they're ones that really love a challenge. So although we see it as like horrendous, these children see it as a great opportunity
to prove themselves, right?
To prove themselves and build their skills, because in normal school with normal children, they were bored.
Then at age 8, I think they take the next level of their training at pretty much they get dropped off in the mountains, right? By themselves. And they're supposed to find a way to meet up and then go to an extraction point. Most likely one Spartan is going to be left behind, right? John, he tells the group no one's being left behind. And that's where you get to see him really take the lead and take on that leadership role and the leader that every Spartan looks up to. Even though through the program, they're all the same.
They're all the same rank.
There's no
they have different
ranks,
physical abilities. One of them he mentions is a little bit faster, but they're all the same rank. And he stands out as one of the leaders. He starts off selfish, as a 6-year-old kid should be. And then slowly through his training, he then becomes a leader where he really cares for all the people on his squad. And then, so all of them, after they're being injected, some of them get horribly either disfigured, some kind of like brain damage, or just outright die from these chemical injections that they get. So they recruit these kids at age 6, and they torture them basically through basic training until they're 14, and then they inject them with some drugs that kills a percentage of them. So the ones that survive are now able to, the ones that are not handicapped and are physically capable, they're now then escorted to another, I think it was like a weapons testing facility on another planet where they have it's a separate project, Linear, whatever the armor name is. Where they pick up this armor, and this armor is like super fast and it's super quick, but no human can actually use it.
It's super heavy.
So only the Spartans with their improved abilities can use this armor. And then they are sent on a mission against some, terrorists or rebels?
Oh, yeah. So the whole point of the Spartan program, they were created and built before there were even Covenant, the aliens. They're created to pretty much stop rebellions happening across the outer reaches of
They were like the SEAL
solar
Team
system.
6
Yeah.
of the Halo universe.
Pretty much.
And they were created to fight off terrorists.
So it's more to save lives and at the same time stop rebellions and bring order into the system of humans.
And so Eric Nyland wrote this book. He did have access to what they call the Halo Bible, which gives you the full Halo story. But this book, if you were to read it just alone, it's barely scratching the surface of a gigantic story in the Halo universe. So talking about how the Spartans were created to fight off rebels is really alluding to a larger story where older colonies on Earth are subjugating the people of newer colonies in the outer planets. And again, it's just too much to get into. But if you read the rest of the books, it ends up being one of the best story arcs altogether, I think.
Yeah. So on their first mission, what do they do? Like, what is their point?
I think their first mission is against a rebel base, and they're supposed to recover some important person they're supposed to capture, right?
Oh, I think the leader, one of the leaders. Yeah,
one of the rebel leaders that capture him. So they infiltrate, they capture him, and I think that proves to the military officers that these guys know what they're doing, and Dr. Halsey is given a pass for all of the crimes against humanity that she's committed because now she has made these perfect soldiers.
And there were some lives that were lost. I think some, because there's rebels, but there's also families and just people that wanted to be out there.
What did shock me was how often Master Chief seems to just nonchalantly kill people.
Like,
he'll kill rebels, totally fine. But even in training, he has no problem breaking people's arms,
when they're in the
cracking
wilderness.
their skulls. And I'm like, wait a minute, that was a training exercise. Why did you just break his ribs? That seems a little over the top. So it's a little shocking. But what's even more shocking than that is when John 117, Master Chief, has his training, he has the injections, and now he's super fast. And he goes, I think they're on a spaceship or an orbital station where he goes to a gym and he's lifting weights and he pisses off some ODST soldiers.
What's ODST?
Orbital drop shock troopers.
And what are they, like the Rangers at the time?
I think you can consider them like, cavalry Rangers because they drop from spaceships onto a planet, right? And then part of that, they're also part of a special group inside of the ODSTs. What are they called?
Oh, the Hell Jumpers.
Hell Jumpers, that's what they are.
I think they were the elite before the Spartans came around.
Yeah,
right?
So these guys, again, are the best of the best normal human beings.
Yeah,
and
drugs.
then they're pissed off at Master Chief for messing up some of their weights. And then they kind of push him around and they're about to get into a fight, right? It's just a normal, brawl that soldiers often get into.
But he didn't do anything until their higher ranking officer says, deal with it in the ring.
No, that's not true. I think they do fight before that.
No.
Okay.
No. Then until they get into the ring, because now he has like a directive, like a higher ranking leader told him, deal with it in the ring. Now he has a mission. That's the thing with Master Chief or Spartan 117. He usually doesn't know how to react or what to do until a higher ranking official gives him an order. And
he's the consummate soldier.
Yeah.
He needs orders, he needs a mission, and he's going to accomplish the mission.
Yeah, so I think they got into a scuffle, but they didn't officially duke it out until that other person say deal with it in the boxing ring. And he took on all of them. And
he breaks their ribs, he cracks their skulls. So all of them end up bloody and unconscious at the very end. Right?
I think one of them might have even died.
UNSC soldiers.
Yeah. Hey, he just shrugged it off and walked off the gym.
No big deal to me.
It was like, man.
He often just leaves a trail of broken or dead bodies in his wake. And he doesn't seem to care too much about it other than the mission.
Yeah, he gives it like a thought.
Which is a little shocking.
And then he says, oh, well, it's part of the mission. No second thought. He moves on.
Which I could say it's shocking, but it's not that shocking seeing how he was abducted when he was 6, cloned, tortured for several years, injected with weird chemicals.
And that's all he knows.
That's all he knows is military life, So,
but it's also good because...
So is it his fault or is it Dr. Halsey's fault for creating this monster?
Well, I would say the training, of course.
So after he's fully trained and he's fully armored, he then starts hearing stories of the Covenant showing up, right? They destroyed Harvest.
They glassed.
They glassed it.
Glassing a planet.
Totally destroyed it, burnt it to a crisp to where the dirt turned into glass. So now the Spartans' mission is to fight off this Covenant attack.
And every time they do fight them, they were told to try to get some weapons or some armor so that the UNSC could start like, what do they call that? Like backwards engineer and try to recreate that weaponry and technology, because so far the humans are just being destroyed, right?
Yeah,
like
so the
nothing,
humans are constantly losing. They win a very few battles, but at a huge cost.
Yeah, that's when they
retreating.
like outnumber the aliens, right?
They're retreating, and then they try to recover some technology, and then they realize that the aliens are looking for something. So they destroy a lot of planets, they kill a lot of people, but the aliens are looking for something. And they're trying to figure out what they're looking for.
So the UNSC has a lot of remote scanning outposts, kind of like the radar post during World War II. And there's one outpost that sees like a bunch of ships coming through, right? But the guy, Ensign Lovell,
something like that, yeah.
So he reports it, saying the way they're,
It looks weird.
yeah, it looks weird, and he sends it off. Captain Keyes picks it up. He goes to intercept them, and he was right. He gets to fight the Covenant. He eventually fights them off with some nice maneuvering. I can't really explain it. It's insane.
And I really got to give it up to the author, Eric Nyland. So he's able to write a good science fiction book that's already based in an existing world, add some new things. Yeah. He's able to write really good hand-to-hand combat, action-oriented
battles,
combat. And then on top of that, he's able to write really good space battles.
Man. Yeah, like if you've seen The Expanse or even Star Wars, just the way they maneuver in space and shoot at each other.
Yeah, but Star Wars doesn't really have good space battles. You know what I mean? It's just spaceships and then lasers kind of shooting everywhere. The way they describe this is a lot more like David Weber's Honor Harrington series.
There you go.
Yeah.
That's true.
What was that other series we read? By Jack Campbell.
Oh, yeah.
It's kind of like the Navy in the ocean, right? But then you take them into space, and now there's a whole, another dimension to these battles. And Eric Nyland really amps up the excitement in those kind of just really, like if you were to just see it, it probably wouldn't be that exciting, right? Because they're just in the empty blackness of space. But the way he writes is very entertaining.
So he ends up beating that Covenant fleet, because you could say.
And then that's when he becomes Captain Keyes.
But what they didn't know is that the Covenant retreated, I believe, but they released some drop ships that go to the planet, and that's where they start going. I think they go to a museum, right?
Yeah, they go to a museum to recover a rock that has. So then they find out that rock has directions to another planet, I think.
Yeah.
To something it has directions to something they're looking for.
It took them a while because they didn't understand. It wasn't the Covenant's language. It wasn't the Covenant's technology. It was older than that.
Yeah, so something older than the Covenant, something older than humanity, something far more advanced than both of them.
Yeah.
Which is scary, right? Because the first time humans come into contact with aliens, they're getting just destroyed. And now they learn there's a third alien race that they have to probably fight off.
Are they an enemy of the Covenant? Or are they allies? They don't know. In the museum, you get to see how the Spartans battle. It's Master Chief. And he wasn't always Master Chief. Just like any other soldier, he started from the lowest ranking.
Yeah, he
during
starts
training.
as like a chief petty officer, which is basically like a sergeant, which never made sense to me because these are super soldiers with great training and great. They're basically like officers from West Point, but he's just a sergeant? That didn't make sense.
Yeah. But to me, I like that because when I played the games, I just saw him as Master Chief, the high and mighty, like no one's at his level. But you get to see he had to develop. He had, I believe, 207 combat missions. And, you're told that he won every award possible except the Prisoner of War one.
So, yeah, a lot of what goes on in this book speaks to a lot of the different games that Bungie has created, right? So we find out that the Covenant are looking for Forerunner technology, which they think is like holy. But then we come to find out in a different book that the Forerunners and the Halo rigs that they created were created to destroy worlds and pretty much anything within like a certain radius of light years. So it's not holy. They're basically weapons.
So in the digital copy of this book, there's like extra chapters at the end, and they actually capture an elite. They interview him. Pretty obvious that these alien species are very religious. They see humans as dirty and unholy. They're going to cleanse and wipe out everyone because they destroyed or step on what's holy to them. So they're going to kill the whole race while they're looking for that technology. But just how they talk about kind of reminds me of the like back in the day, the Crusades.
Yeah.
Like just fanatics and
Yeah.
it's crazy.
I think they call them like zealots.
I have another question for you. So these kids got kidnapped and then they were cloned, but what happened to the real ones? Like, what do you think?
Yeah, I don't know what happened to the real ones, but if I had to guess, Dr. Halsey, really Dr. Frankenstein, that has no regard for children's safety. She probably has them on ice somewhere so that she can clone them once again.
But that facility where she went and first talked to John, Spartan 117, was facility number 117. I don't know. It was like in the hundreds. So are there other facilities? Probably so, because there was other Spartan programs at the same time, right? His was just the first one.
Yeah, so throughout the Halo series of video games, we learned that there's more Spartans to come, and she alludes to it somewhere at the end of the book, that there's going to be another series of training Spartans. So I'm guessing they're going to abduct more children, subject them to this torture. I guess we can all forgive her because she's saving humanity.
Yeah, see, and that's the other thing. Like, it's one of those decisions that the government or scientists, whatever, make where it seems horrible, of course, but when they're put to use, they end up saving the human race. Yeah. So is it okay? So yeah, I would recommend this book mainly for that backstory and also the pretty awesome like space battles.
If you enjoy the Halo series, again, highly recommended because it gives you backstory on almost everything that happens in Halo Combat Evolved and sets the stage for everything else that happens in the Halo series.
But unlike the game, there was no teabagging in the book. I did not read anything about that.
You got teabagged a lot in multiplayer?
All the tanks are ready.
Preferably in a residential area. Should be played at high volume.